All right, hello and welcome to the Sierra Speaker Series, brought to you by California State Parks and the Sierra State Parks Foundation. My name is Jeremy Lin, and I'm the California State Park interpreter based at Donner Memorial State Park. This speaker series shares and connects the rich cultural and natural history of the area to the community. Please donate to Sierra State Parks Foundation today to support the interpretation, restoration, and preservation of the park system in the Lake Tahoe Donner area. Your tax-deductible donation will be kept locally and applied to priority projects. Please visit sierrastateparks.org to see how you can get involved and access a full list of upcoming events. With me today are Bob Crowley and Tim Tweetmeyer. Bob and Tim are part of a 4-member team of ultra-distance athletes who share a passion for history and aim to honor the lives and courage of the Forlorn Hope members of the historic Donner Party of 1846. This modern Forlorn Hope expedition will depart on December 16th, the same date in 1846 when 17 Donner Party emigrants set out on snowshoes in a desperate attempt to cross the mountains and reach a settlement near Sacramento, 100 miles away, to find help. After enduring punishing physical, mental, and emotional hardship, only 7 survived. Both Bob and Tim are experienced ultra runners and have been kind enough to talk about the motivation and preparation behind their challenging 100-mile trek from Donner Lake, right out here, to Johnson's Ranch outside of Sacramento. Thank you both for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks for the invite.
All right. Great. So we're going to start with the questions here. So Tim, can you please introduce yourself and share with us your background in ultra running and your motivation for joining this expedition?
Sure. I live in Auburn. I actually grew up in the Bay Area in Redwood City on the peninsula, and then moved here when I got exposed to trail running as part of the Western States 100-mile run. And I ran my first ultra run when I was still in college, 1979. So I turned 62 last month. So I've been ultra running and trail running for more than 40 years. And that's the reason I live in the foothills, is because it's just a rich collection of trails. My local one is the Auburn State Recreation Area, where the Auburn Dam was constructed, and it's a huge area where you see runners and cyclists all the time. And you know the connection here is, a lot of the places we run. I also have a cabin in Soda Springs where we are now, kind of shaking out some gear for the trip, and the Overland Immigrant Route literally crosses right less than a quarter mile from my cabin. So between those two things, it's been a connection. The Overland Route also crosses through Auburn, a little north of town. So we'll be going right through, what would be my adopted hometown as we do this. But California, particularly this area, Placer County and the American River drainages, are just a vast, rich treasure trove of hiking, running, and history. We always say you go into the North Fork and it's like the miners left last week, and you find mine shafts, tracks, all kinds of things. So we are lucky to live in this area.
Yeah, we're living like amidst the history. That's pretty cool. We're just in the middle of it. Yeah, and of the kind of extreme environment. So it's kind of cool partnership there. All right, excellent. All right, Bob, you also have lots of experience in ultra running. For instance, you competed in over 200 endurance events. Can you please share with us kind of how you became interested in ultra running and this type of activity?
Yeah, so my path is similar to Tim, but I grew up back east and then have migrated to California and been here for 20 or so years, live outside of Sacramento and Fair Oaks. And like Tim, was drawn to the sport. I was drawn into it actually through the equestrian side, ride and tie. So it's a sport where you have a horse and 2 runners, and that introduced me to the trails and ultimately to the Auburn area, which is where we both kind of hang out for most of the time. And, my trail running's been since '89, so I'm not as long as Tim, pretty far. We're both about the same age, and have a tremendous passion for the community of trail runners. So I'm the president of the International Trail Running Association based in Switzerland, and we represent about 1.8 million trail runners around the world. And it's a chance for me to kind of give back to the sport, but also we're safeguarding the values, and the values of the trail running are really what kind of attract and retain a lot of people, including myself. So the chance to take that community, which is very tight knit, and then combine it with this community of historians and trail finders and people interested in the heritage of all sorts of history, which is really what we're doing here, has been fascinating. They're two very different worlds. In the last 7 years that we've been at this, we've come to become very fond of the historical world as well as the athletic world. And when we go out on the 16th, it's a chance for us to bring those two things together in a very unique way. And we're feel very honored to be in a position to do that.
Yeah. All right. Well, how did you start like becoming interested in trail running? A lot of people think about like endurance ultra running and they, get a migraine because they're thinking about just how intense that is and how unattractive that is for a lot of people. So what kind of brought you to just begin to start running long distances at a time?
Well, for me, it was, I started out just trying to do a little bit of exercise. I was overweight at the time in my 30s, and I needed to do something. So someone introduced me to running. Didn't like to run, but we started to do it on the roads. And then one thing led to another, and I met this friend that wanted to do this ride and tie where it's a horse and two runners. And he said, "Hey, you run on the trails?" And I said, "Well, that's kind of crazy. It sounds dangerous. Trip and fall, and all the how do you stay on your feet? How do you not get yourself into trouble?" And he taught me how to trail run, and we did it with a horse. And then that led me to the community of trail runners that said, "Hey, you can do just the trail running without the horse. It's actually as fun." And that being in the Auburn area, and there are a lot of trail runners out here in the Sierras, that community drew me in. The people were so wonderful, Tim being one of those people. And they just, they welcome you, they teach you, you learn so much when you're on the trail. And of course, the most important thing is we get to be outdoors recreating in some of the most beautiful scenery in the world. And so it really was infectious. And, that happened 38 years ago. And really there hasn't been a time where I've ever even considered not doing it. I mean, thankfully, I've got the knees and the physio, take care of ourselves enough to be able to continue to do it. And hopefully, can do that going forward. But it is a wonderful way to experience nature and get some exercise, and the community is great. So you can do it with friends. What more can you ask for?
Yeah. How many knee replacements have you had?
0. Yeah, Tim and I are getting in long in the tooth in terms of our colleagues, and we thank our lucky stars every day we're still able to do this. They're most of, I would say probably 90% of our colleagues that we were running with, just hips and knees and all that stuff. I don't know. Yeah. Maybe we just got hit with the lucky stick, but we're able to keep the wheels on the bus.
Yeah, part of that's just retaining what you have, taking care of what you have, because it's you wonder how many more miles you have left in you every time you go out. But yeah, and like Bob said, that's the same thing. The trail running community is a pretty collaborative bunch, even though when we go to events, you're racing against the clock. Bob was telling a story when we were hiking this morning on the pass about his first run being between Sugar Bowl and Squaw Valley, and he was having a hard time, little altitude sickness, and somebody's like, "Hey, just follow me, put one foot in front of the other. We'll get out of this and get out of the altitude here in a bit, and we'll be done." And that's kind of the way it is. And it's it really draws people in that way, because one, you're out in some really great scenery. It's a nice break from your normal day to day. Bob's in private equity. I work in high tech, and you're pushing computers and talking to people on phones and whatnot. And then when you're out on the trail, it's a totally different world. Just a great balance for the stresses of work and whatever else is going on, to just kind of lose yourself in the wilderness.
Yeah, I bet they kind of complement each other pretty well, because you have, the business aspect and your kind of professional life, and then you get to do something completely different and maybe, mentally debrief or kind of like mentally come to peace with what's kind of happening in both worlds. They're just so different that I feel like they would kind of, synergistically kind of empower each other.
No, you're right. Yeah. When you're just out for a trail run, it really quiets your mind, and you can find great peace, kind of live in the moment and enjoy it. When you're racing, it's a different deal, but it complements working in our day jobs, simply because there's a lot of problem solving in ultra running. When you're out there for hours and hours or days at a time, inevitably lots of things go wrong, and you really have to be able to remain calm and sort out what the problem is, and then address it in order to succeed. So that's incredibly helpful, of course, in our day jobs.
And,
Right.
in particular, this particular project, it's been great because as Bob and I have been out, on the ground, we've spent, weekends on the trail. We're hours and hours on the trail. And we debate all the stuff that we read about in the books, or, what do you think about this? Did they go over that way? Somebody said in this book, it was like blah, blah, blah. And then we'd have an hour long back and forth on, how much did Stanton talk to Eddie about the route? Why didn't they go back to Reno? Why, all these things that nobody specifically talked about, and why? But then you're trying to speculate and connect the dots of why they did what they did, and so it really lends itself well as we're out there, kind of just trying to find our way. We're debating the things we've read.
Yeah, and when you're in it, you have a whole different perspective, kind of coming from being out in the field, which is different than just a scholar sitting on a leather-bound chair going, whoa, I think it was this and this. You're actually living it.
Yeah, a lot of the books we've read looked at a lot of topo maps and, satellite images, and that's all fun. But when you get out there, you get a much better appreciation for what you're in for sure.
And this leads us to, how are you translating all of your ultra running experience into snowshoeing? Those are pretty different activities, right? Or am I wrong?
Yeah, I mean, ultra running's, I always kid about it when I started. It's, I was, I played sports as a kid, but I was always never really could run very fast. I mean, I was okay, but I said, this is great about ultra running. You just start slow and you just try to out slow everyone. It's, you don't really ever have to go fast. And this is almost just like that, right? We're not going to be running much of this. We might do a little bit, maybe once we get down onto the pavement out and, from Colfax to Wheatland we'll be on some roads, some gravel roads, some other stuff, but it's really just, kind of grinding out miles, one foot after the other. The great part about this one is it is kind of a route finding, although we've seen a lot of the trail. The trail changes on a regular basis, whether there's snow, there's not snow, the weather and all kinds of things. So each time you go out, it's a little bit different.
Yeah, and for me, I grew up I had 15 years in New England, and so, and I was running during those times, and so almost 5 months of the year you're in the snow, and you want to get out. So you just learn how to adapt, whether it's snowshoes or micro spikes or whatever it may be, and it feels to me like a homecoming to be able to get back out in the snow on foot. And Jennifer is also from New England; she's from New Hampshire. She and I were commenting last night the same thing, that it feels a little bit like a homecoming. So very comfortable, enjoy the snow. It's great. All the snow sports are wonderful. Jennifer and I both grew up playing hockey, pond hockey, and that's what you do. When you're back, when 5 months of the year, everything's frozen, you have no choice. You want to be outdoors. So of course, the difference is that the depth of the snow here. Tim was saying this yesterday. Our friends from back east go, "Oh, it snowed 10 inches. It's a huge storm." And 10 inches here is a
flurry.
It's like 3 hours.
Yeah, you don't even break out the plows for that. Yeah, 10 inches. Especially if you're in Soda Springs, you're getting it by the feet.
Yeah,
overnight.
Amazing.
Yeah,
the quantity of snow here is absolutely stunning.
So you're from the live free or die state. Or I like to call it the live free and die state, because they don't have like seatbelt laws, right? Or helmet laws or something like that.
Yeah. That's Jennifer. I was living in Boston, so it's Massachusetts. Okay. But of course, everybody in New England calls them, Massachusetts, Massville. Yeah. So
I've heard those names. Yeah.
Be that as it may, I spent most of my running, if it were in the mountains, in the green and the greens and the whites. So they were kind enough to adopt me. But yeah, that's pretty rugged. Not only is it very cold, and the snow tends to be very icy and slippery, but the granite there, and the terrain is really rugged. So if you want to be outdoors in New England around throughout the year, you just have to learn how to travel across snow and across ice and across and deal with the cold conditions. And of course we can all do it. It's just getting your head around it.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, the original Forlorn Hope Party of 1846 They fashion their own snowshoes using wagon parts and items from nature. You guys are going to be using modern snowshoes and bringing ample food. So my favorite trail snack out there, I have to say, is the Stroop waffle. You guys ever have Stroop waffles before? They're like sugary and like honey. Oh, just like so good, like kind of flaky in there. So when you're really feeling a little bit low, I used to lead a lot of backpacking trips and stuff, and those just brought me right back up. Can you talk a little bit about your equipment, as well as some of the food that you're going to bring?
Tim, have you ever heard of a stroopwafel?
Yeah, we're going to have our packs packed with stroopwafels.
If you guys don't have any, I will bring you some.
Yeah. Yeah, everyone will have some of those with them. That's the best snack on the trail there is, particularly when you need to travel light and fast. Yeah, I mean, the thing we have several different types of snowshoes. Bob's connected us with a company over in France where it's like almost like a running. It's a snowshoe that behaves a little more like a running shoe, and it's great because in mixed terrain, which we'll probably see a lot more of than we were kind of anticipating, because we're having a little bit of a drought here in the early part of or late fall, early winter. It's great. And we have other more conventional ones that we can go to if we want to. We're going to be traveling with light packs. We are going to have some people crewing for us, so we're not going to be toting sleeping bags and tents from the beginning, which will make it a little bit easier to move through the snow. But we've gone back and forth. I mean, actually, Bob's done a little bit of snow camping. Jen and Elka are experienced snow campers, so they're familiar with insulated pads and how do you stay warm at night, and how do you put together your sleeping pads with your sleeping bags, with your wool socks, and different layering. So we've learned a lot from them, from some of the trips that they've done, and so that's one of the activities tonight. We're gonna go by and end up. There's Jen. Then we're going to go out, get our stuff out, and everyone's going to explain their sleeping strategy. We'll have tents, but everybody's kind of got a different sleeping bag. Some of us are going to take bivy sacks to put around our sleeping bags to get a little more warmth. What are you going to sleep in, as far as socks and tights and layers? So we can review all that, but we have pretty good access. Those guys are really good recommenders of equipment. So over the last couple of months, we've been picking up, Bob recommended some outdoor research mitts, so I've got those. We've added some pieces of equipment. Exoskin is another company that makes some really nice base layer stuff that works really well. If you're, spending a lot, if you're exercising a lot, it dries real quickly, but keeps you warm. That's the kind of stuff that we've been kind of researching, and until probably 2 days before, we won't really know exactly what we're going to have. If it's like it is now, it'll be great, because during the time that the sun's up and we're moving, we'll be able to stay warm. As soon as the sun goes down, then we'll have to bundle up again. So,
yeah, I imagine this is going to be somewhat of a balance of layers, where you're, kind of your body heat, you're generating body heat, so you're shedding layers and maybe slowing down and taking a little, constantly like adjusting.
That's right.
Yeah, our packs will be full of layers.
We do a lot of these quarter zips where you can air condition yourself or warm yourself up. So a lot of up and down, and then we take layers that we can tie around our bodies. So you may strip it off for 10, 15 minutes while you're climbing. And then right when you get to the top, so you don't get chilled, you put it right back on. So it's a lot of off, on, where the base stays the same. And then the food, the stuff like stroopwafels, we make sure you keep them close to your body so they don't get too hard. Jeremy, you're laughing. They get hard as a rock. It's like a brick if you let it freeze. It still tastes good, but man, you break a tooth trying to get into that thing.
Oh yeah, it can be dangerous.
So, so you keep the hydration and the things that are going to freeze up close to your body, and a lot of snacks, a lot of calories, carbs and some proteins, and of course, a steady flow of hydration, electrolytes throughout the day, because we'll be out there 7-8 hours a day. And so we got to keep ourselves, we got to take care of each other, keep ourselves healthy. Even if we're trekking, we're still burning, we're probably going to burn about 5,000-6,000 calories a day. So it's impossible for us to replace all those calories throughout the meal. So we're going to always go in deficit, but in the evening in particular, we'll have hot meals, really try to get some high caloric meals and put that back into us, and it also helps you get to sleep, right? You fill your belly, get nice and warm, and then you hit that sleeping bag quick. So you have a nice night. And then I think we'll be popping up pretty early and getting going, probably have a cup of coffee real quick, and then hit the trails. And then when it's sunny and things start to warm up a little bit, we'll stop and have the, oatmeal and that kind of thing. But we we have to keep moving. You know, we're going to do 20-ish miles a day. And so we gotta try to arrive before dark so we can get the camp set up and have some time to chat before we, you know, hit the hay. And we also have, as Tim said, some support crews. So we don't want to, you know, we don't want to have them out there forever. Got to be conscious of their time too.
Excellent. Well, that brings me to my next question. So what are some of the kind of mental training and mental aspects of just endurance sports in general, and also just kind of the challenges that you anticipate for this particular trip and how you might overcome those? I know it's just such a mental game doing these long distance efforts.
Yeah, well, the one nice thing is we've seen a pretty good part of the course. The one area that, you know, we're going to be questioning ourselves is, I don't know how many times if you've been into the North Fork of the American River, but there's no easy days in there. It's really steep on both sides. And, you know, one of the days that's going to get really interesting, and we'll probably be talking to ourselves, is when we climb from the river crossing that we cross down by the foot of Sawtooth Ridge and go up to Elliott Ranch Road on the Forest Hill side. It's a 2,300 foot climb in a mile and a half, maybe. Ooh. So it's steep. Bob and I have done it once, kind of just checking it out. But, you know, that's one of those where it's going to be 10, 15 strides, lean on your trekking poles for a second, then get some more. But, you know, we've done enough of this in our ultra running, because, you know, we've done 100-mile races. Bob's done 200 miles, and he's done the Tour de Giants over in Europe. That's several days. And you get kind of used to just, you know, there's times where you're trying not to think about what you're doing, and you're off in some other place. And there's other times where you're so focused on what's going on. It really depends on what you need at that time. But there's, through the 40 plus years, 30 plus years that we've been running, I want to say we perfected that. But you understand there's going to be some real lows and there's going to be some real highs. And that's just all part of the management of the expedition. Is, you know, there's going to be times where I'm going to be sucking it and Bob will be telling me, yeah, I know you're having a bad patch. Let's go. Just have a, you know, eat something, drink something, try some things, get out of it. And the same thing, you know, Jen and Elka are experienced ultra runners. And so they'll be doing the same thing, keeping an eye on each other. A lot of times you get almost too focused on yourself and you get in a hole, and someone else will, hey, dude, you haven't been eating for the last 3 hours. Get going, you know? So, yeah.
Yeah. Is music, do you guys listen to music at all? I've read that some endurance athletes really depend on music to kind of get them through rough patches.
Yeah, you know, Tim and I, when we're training, a lot of time, ultra running, when you're training, you do it alone. It's a great sport for COVID, by the way, because you get outside, which is great, and you can be alone. But I know when I'm alone, I'm listening to books. I know Tim does this as well. So I rip through a lot of books. And this is actually part of the connection as to how we got to where we are. And I'm sure we're going to get that in an interview, but it really started with some books, and Tim and I share a passion of historical fiction and a bunch of other kinds of novels. And so it was in that listening during trail runs that we, you know, I came upon a book about the same time Tim came upon it. And then we went on a run together and started talking about the book. You know, it's like a book club on foot. And next thing you know, and I listen to some music during an event if I feel like you know, everybody does something different, and I use it as a treat. So when I've done a section and I've, you know, kind of worked it and performed the way I wanted, then I treat myself to some music just to as a carrot out there. Other people use it to pull themselves out of a hole. And Tim will explain how I know he uses it quite a bit.
Yeah, I use it a lot in training, not as much when if I'm racing, but, you know, we do so much training on our own. There's times where you really need something to take your mind off how long you're going to be out there or whatnot. But yeah, I've kind of, you know, developed over time, because now I'm kind of taking my phone with me and I listen to podcasts and stories. And like Bob said, you know, you get on a thread. You know, we've got a handful of really top authors that we have kind of gravitated to. Obviously, Daniel James Brown, who wrote The Indifferent Stars Above, you know, is someone that, you know, the minute the next book comes out, we'll be buying it in day one. I'm kind of a fan of Hampton Sides. He's written some real great expedition books. If you haven't read In the Kingdom of Ice, that's a beauty. but yeah, we get into those books, and then the narrative nonfiction stuff is just so good because it takes you into that era, and that's how we got a little hooked on this Forlorn Hope story. Although the Donner story, it has been told a million times, and everybody knows, you got Donner Lake, you got Donner Pass, you got Donner Peak. There's all these things named after Donner, and the story everybody kind of knows at a high level. But you ask somebody, hey, what do you know about the Forlorn Hope? And they're like, who? Were they out there? No, this is a group of folks that had to go and do their hike, their 100-mile hike in the middle of winter just to save their families. And then all of a sudden you get into this whole other level of dialogue and analysis and for us being endurance geeks and liking to be out in these trails, and it's even fun to go someplace you've never been, right? And a lot of people don't go in to the North Fork because it's too rugged, and it's really great to explore and see new places. And some of it's really great, and some of it you're boonie crashing in the poison oak and the snakes and the ticks and everything else, but that's what makes it interesting.
Yeah, for those of you watching from home, at some point take a look, maybe Google Maps or Google Earth, and take a look at the North Fork of the American River. It is noticeably, that canyon is noticeably deeper than anything around that whole area. It's just like this steep kind of cut into the earth. And that's where you guys are going. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah. It's still it's still designated wild and scenic.
Yeah.
There's been no development on it.
Yeah. Well, because there is some dangerous sections, I want to ask you a little bit about maybe safety precautions. Are you guys avalanche trained and how to assess avalanches? Is that even a concern with the route that you're going? Do you have GPS trackers or rescue beacons, or planning for scenarios where things do go awry?
So although we're going into the Sierra and into the wild of the North Fork, they are not, where we will be are not avalanche risk areas, thankfully. So we don't have to worry about that, although everything else you mentioned, yes. So trained, a number of us are trained to do what we need to do from a first aid standpoint. Of course, we'll carry all that. We'll carry safety gear, safety blankets, bivvies, whistles, compasses, maps. We'll have a GPS tracker on us the whole time, which people can follow us live, but that's an in-reach system where we can text out, contact the crew, be in constant contact. So we've taken all the common sense precautions to
in reach with us so we can get out. The one good thing is Bob and I have both spent time in that area on trails and other areas that we aren't going to use as part of the event. And so, we know a lot of the escape routes, so if we do get in trouble and, we're in some really crazy spot that, is hard to get out of, we know other areas and other trailheads and other places that we could go to get quick access to crew or expedite our way out to some place that's civilization. The real abyss on this one is, when the Forlorn Hope takes the wrong turn away from the highway out at Lang Road, which is right near Emigrant Gap, they go across the North Fork and over to the Forest Hill side. And that's kind of where we'll be kind of on our own. And hopefully, the other part is some of that is not on trail. There's no trail at all. So, that's always a little bit more, I don't want to say dangerous, but hazardous. You're going through burn areas and there's a lot of timber that's down and you're hopping over trees and whatnot. So hopefully we can stay safe through that. And then, like I say, when we get up onto the other side out of the canyon, we'll be over on the Forest Hill side.
All right. Yeah. So just kind of knowing the terrain and knowing maybe emergency exit routes, kind of depending on where you are, to quick exits if you need to get to a road or a main area.
Right.
Yeah.
We'll cross the American River twice. And so we have some people that will be kind of meeting us there. Again, it might not be a big deal, but if we get rain or, any kind of a melt, then, that could be a little tricky, particularly when you're tired. You get into those areas where you're trying to cross the river, you've had a long day, your legs are, toast, and it's really easy to slip and go for a swim. So we'll try to avoid that. That's why that we have some, one of the guys that'll be on our crew is, rafted or not rafted, kayak the North Fork, which is a very difficult kayak, but he knows the river really well. So we've been asking him questions, at what flows is it going to get tricky? And so he's going to help shepherd us through that. Those two will cross down at the foot of Sawtooth Ridge, right where the, I think the Blackhawk mine is right there. And then we'll cross again down on the Stevens Trail, which is between Iowa Hill and Colfax.
All right.
No bridges allowed.
You've mapped this out. Yeah, Bob, for some reason your audio is cutting out. You might want to. Yeah, you might want to get out of here and rejoin if that's possible. We're also kind of coming towards the end of this interview, so if your connectivity doesn't work, I'm getting a pretty good connection with Tim over here.
All right, I'll hop out and hop back on.
Yeah, give that a shot. And while Bob is doing that, I'll pose the next question to you, Tim, and you can kind of hop in once he gets back. So your group has been preparing for this trip for 7 years. And your website, forlornhope.org, is an incredible resource that illuminates the tragic story of the Forlorn Hope and also details your upcoming expedition. Can you please share a little bit about your academic journey learning about the Donner Party history? I know that you kind of touched on this a little bit. I love Franklin Graves. I think his character is just such, I don't know, so American or so ambitious, where everyone else is kind of like hunkering down to settle in. He was like, no, we cannot wait here. We have to go. Let's get out of here. Like anything we can do to get out of here, we need to take right now. So I really kind of appreciate Franklin Graves for that. But yeah, does it do any kind of little stories within the Donner Party history just kind of have any personal significance or provide any inspiration for you?
Well, that was the hook for me personally. I know Bob might have another take, but when we were reading In Different Stars, right? Franklin Graves was about the age that I was when I was reading that book. So, I was probably 57, 58. He was 58 when he led this, and he was really 30 years or 25 years older than anyone else on the trip. Everyone else was in their early 30s or 20s or teens. So, I was like, wow, this old dude, he just, and could you make 15 pairs of snowshoes by hand and then, convince 14 other people, including your 2 oldest daughters, to, hey, we're going to go for a 100-mile snowshoe trip. Won't this be fun? And so, yeah, he was kind of our original hero in that trip because we've debated this of, how he was able to convince those folks. And we had a good talk about it yesterday because you realize at the lake was a mess, right? I think a lot of the people were like, God, I'd go anywhere than to stay here any longer. They had spent close to six weeks already there. And, running out of food, everybody was dirty. There was lice and everybody. And so I think it was like, well, hey, anything's better than what I have now. But yeah, Franklin Graves is one of the guys that we really kind of resonated with because obviously In Different Stars, the difference in that book is they really do concentrate a lot more on the Forlorn Hope group than a lot of the other Donner books. But the analysis for us in the 7-year trip, and Bob's got the library to show, is it's a collection of 25 books. Some are really good, some not so good. Some of them, they're really good for half the trip, and then the farther they go down the road, towards Wheatland, it seems they run out of things to comment on because all of a sudden, they're in Colfax, and then all of a sudden they're in Wheatland, and that's a 40-mile route. And so, the stories kind of, I don't want to say they fall apart, but they tend to fray a little bit on the edges. And that's where the fun for us is trying to knit together all these different books that have been written, the original accounts. George Stewart wrote one in 1930, then updated in 1960. He actually almost wrote 2 books on it. And he, out of anybody who probably did the most of their life was dedicated to that, George was the guy that, wrote Ordeal by Hunger. And a lot of the stuff, he was also a person that lived in that area. So we kind of grade these books based on where the authors lived, how well they researched the story, how much they had gone out onto the trail or looked at the terrain. It's real easy, again, to say, look at a satellite map or drive your car there. But once you're actually on the ground, it's a whole different take. So that's been kind of the fun analysis. Bob finally, he did all the home. We started with a spreadsheet, looking at all these stories, trying to knit them together. And then, people are saying on the same day they were doing different mileages and this and that. So we finally had it we're bringing it all in a spreadsheet. And then Bob found this app that would allow you to put it all kind of in one frame of glass anyway. So I don't remember that Bob knows the app name, but we could look at every day, and this is what Brown said, and this is what Stewart said, and this is what Rosen said, and this is what everybody that's written a book on the Forlorn Hope. And so we could look at each one and go, well, how likely was that? And and so we started to have to throw some of them out, obviously, because we thought that there's no way they did 15 miles that day. They couldn't do 2 miles the day before when they were, their feet were falling apart. So we had to kind of separate the wheat from the chaff. And then what was left was the stuff that we kind of counted on to tell us where to go.
You did your research. So Bob, essentially I was talking about forlornhope.org and how it's an amazing resource for the historic aspects of the Forlorn Hope, and as well as covering your expedition. And I was kind of asking about any kind of personal significance or inspiration that the Donner Party story kind of has given you. I think the audio is
yellow
down,
button.
man. I'm sorry. I think the audio is not working. Yeah, I'm sorry about that. I hate these technical issues.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I think.
Okay. Let that do the talk. We'll let that do the talking, I think.
Okay, I heard that. Yeah. So, and we're almost towards the end here. So, we got a lot of good stuff from you. Great. So, yeah, just to kind of to wrap this up, in addition to visiting forlornhope.org, are there any other ways that we can follow you on your journey within, this project, or potentially, other endeavors that you're working on?
I think on the forlornhope.org, most of our tracking and updates, we'll be trying to post stuff either through Facebook or into the website as we are going along. So part of our crew, we have a photographer and a videographer that's going to try to meet us at certain points, and we can post that out. Long haul, our goal was to create educational resource about the Forlorn Hope. So, once the expedition over, it's not like forlornhope.org is going to go away. We have other plans for it after the expedition. We'll know a lot more after we've done it, and we can reflect on what we've seen versus what that group 174 years ago might have seen, and to be able to explain what we experienced out there. And so, yeah, we're going to turn that site into an educational site as we move forward.
I love it. It really is the best resource on the Forlorn Hope. It's accessible to the public very easily without having to dig through books and kind of, piecing things together. Your timeline is amazing. I just want to give a big appreciation to you guys for doing that part of it, because it really just opens it up. I've actually referenced forlornhope.org to several people who are inquiring about it. I'm like, oh, you got to see the ultimate resource, forlornhope.org. In addition to other, other websites that we have and other partners that we have. But I just love your timeline, how you can kind of go through and kind of pick out different pieces or days or quotes. It's awesome. So if you're watching this, yeah, definitely check that out at some point. Before we conclude here, is there anything else that you want to add about this trip or just mention?
Well, we just appreciate your support and the support of the other folks. The Donner Summit Historical Society has been really a great resource for us. And we've been talking with the guys for months, and also the Wheatland Historical Society and the Oregon California Trail Association. A few people have really helped us in finding the trail, asking questions, getting us onto the right books, any other resources that are available, historic and otherwise. And we're standing on a lot of other shoulders as we've done this. So we really thank those folks that have written about it and have been assisting us along the way. And so, a couple weeks, hopefully we'll be out there cruising along.
All right, and we'll be providing updates and also more information about Forlorn Hope on the State Parks website, the State Park side of things. All right, so this concludes our episode of the Sierra Speaker Series with Bob Crowley and Tim Tweetmeyer. Bob and Tim are part of a 4-member team of ultra-distance athletes who share a passion for history and aim to honor the lives and courage of the Forlorn Hope members of the historic Donner Party of 1846. California State Parks will be posting updates about the Forlorn Hope of 1846 and this modern reprise on our social media pages. I'll also be interviewing the 2 other members of this expedition, Jennifer Hemmen and Elka Reimer, once they all finish. I'll be getting a hold of them and kind of seeing how their expedition was. So please visit forlornhope.org for more information. This interview has been brought to you by California State Parks and the Sierra State Parks Foundation. Please donate to the Sierra State Parks Foundation today to support the interpretation, restoration, and preservation of the park system in the Lake Tahoe Donner area. Your tax-deductible donation will be kept locally and applied to priority projects. Please visit sierrastateparks.org to see how you can get involved and access a full list of upcoming events. Feel free to contact me, Jeremy Lin, the California State Park interpreter, over at Donner Memorial State Park. So until next time, thank you guys so much. Bob and Tim, thank you all for your time. And
thanks, Jeremy.
Stay in touch. All right, take care. See y'all.